All right, so guys, we're just going to jump right into this. So right now we are talking to Tobias Forsling. Did I say that correctly?
Yes, you did.
Awesome. All right. So Tobias, why don't we start? You tell us where you're working right now.
Right now, I'm working at Tarhead Studio, pretty small studio here in Skövde, Sweden.
Yeah.
And in that team, I'm working together with a sister studio called Palindrome Interactive.
Okay.
I've been working there for almost a year now.
Awesome. All right.
And
Yeah.
yeah, go ahead.
Okay. And do you want to throw your ArtStation up on the screen for those who are here with us live?
Yeah. So here is kind of the work I've done over the past 2 years, I think.
Okay. So what kind of work are you known for? What's the job that you do?
So I'm a lead environment artist at the moment, but the work that I'm known for that I do is environment art, and
Okay.
that kind of entails building levels and props for the levels for games.
Now, every time I talk to people about this, environment artists, I should say, I always want to drill further down because environment arts is so broad because there's world builders, props, there's material, the people who just focus on material, there's look dev, there's sci-fi, there's, interior, exterior. So in terms of like the whole broad spectrum, is there any way to kind of pin down what you do a little bit more to say like, this is my specialty?
Well, I guess there is. I mean, as a preference, I prefer doing like level art and propping, like building out a space and just taking the props that our team has built and just building up a space with those props to tell a story and to build up the world. But as my actual work goes, I do create props myself, and I do light my scenes myself. Work a lot with particles, and so it's not that one-sided. But sure, I have preferences.
Okay, great, perfect. So for you, it's level design, but you find yourself in the case of most environment artists in smaller studios, you kind of do everything.
Yeah.
So lighting, and does lighting include effects or any of that stuff?
To some extent, yeah. I mean, like setting up a small system for creating a lightning effect in a weather system,
Right.
or
Yeah.
even going as far as setting up particles in a weather system. That could also fall upon us if we don't have a dedicated effects artist on the project we're working on.
Great. So tell me a little bit about your education. What did you do to get yourself here? Did you go to school? You're self-taught?
Well, I would consider it being a kind of a mixture. I mean, I studied university for 4 years, getting a master's degree in art.
Yeah.
Um, but during that time, the school was, or the studies were formatted in a way so that you got a lot of free time outside of school, which resulted in me doing a lot of self-teaching to get to where I am today.
Got it.
And
How'd you train yourself? Where'd you go? What'd you do?
oh wow, I think the first thing I did really was to look in my class
Yeah.
at school, and I met up with people having kind of the same ambition and same goals as me, and we started working together outside of school and kind of helped each other grow. I found some people that were way above me in skill, and I quickly realized that if I work with these people, I'm gonna learn tons of stuff.
Right. That's great. And where would you
But
classify?
then I can
Yeah, sorry, no, you go ahead. Finish that thought.
but then I kind of at the same time move like use the any online resources I could find, like the classical, you go to YouTube, you find I don't know, any art community, 10,000 hours level up. You take all the help and critiques you can get.
Yeah. Awesome. All right. And then how do you categorize your work? Stylized? Um, how do we speak about it?
Well, my work is really mixed, if I would say so myself.
Yeah.
But that's by choice. The games that I've worked on have been very stylized, and from that I've noticed that I'm kind of painting myself into a corner of only doing one thing.
Right.
And I think that's a dangerous spot, and for me a kind of boring spot to be in as an artist.
Yeah. I understand. How about the software? Because it looks like a lot of the work that you do, these could basically be hand-painted textures to some extent. But are you using Substance, and how is that figuring in, if you are?
I don't think haven't used any hand-painted stuff aside from some very small like tweaks and touches here and there.
Awesome. Yeah.
The earlier stylized stuff was made in ZBrush actually.
Yeah.
And then we used normal map and ambient occlusion bakes from those to create the rest of the textures.
Okay.
But now for my realistic stuff, I use the Substance package.
Okay. If we're looking at, like, you've got some for the Lancelot, you've got some tiling textures. How did you generate those? Is that via the ZBrush technique?
Yeah. So these were made. It's a mixture actually. These the one I'm showing right now, the grass texture.
Yeah.
Our 2D artist at the time drew a patch of grass that I then made tileable through some magic in Photoshop.
Right.
But the rocks and the cliffs and stuff like that is made in ZBrush, like sculpting some unique stones and then building up a grid of them that's tiling.
Okay. So what kind of software do you use every day? What's your pipeline look like?
Well, my everyday use is Maya and Unity mostly, and the Substance package at the moment. Hasn't been that much ZBrush lately, since that's what's required at work at the moment with what we're working on. But a bit of Photoshop as well when it comes to some texture tweaks and like any image work really that's not done directly to the model in Substance Painter.
Got it. And you guys use Unity?
Yeah. And I have been using it for ever since I started making games. It's been the engine I started out in and the engine I've stuck with ever since because it's the one I learned and I like it.
Yeah, it's quite powerful. We use that for the virtual reality class. But what changes have you noticed or do you kind of see on the horizon? Because Unreal is definitely, positioning itself, and its lighting and all of that seem to be quite powerful.
Oh yeah, for sure. I mean, the competition between all the engines is really intense, and it's sometimes quite hard to choose. I mean, for a very long period of time, I wanted to switch to Unreal, but the programmer on our team didn't want to switch because he felt more comfortable working in Unity.
Right.
And I kind of, I don't know, out of habit, went along with it, went into his point of view, and I'm on his side now. I actually prefer Unity because I know the tool and it's the easiest way for me to do what I want to do.
What do you think are some of the things that are, easiest about Unity as opposed to something like Unreal?
I don't know actually. It's I think it would be one of the greatest things is that it would be the easy way I have of like importing and exporting, or actually not exporting, but importing and making changes to models inside Unity. If I make a change on a model in Maya on the next board, it takes like 2 seconds to import and refresh it inside the scene on wherever it's instantiated.
Yeah.
So it's a very fast way to try and iterate, or you can iterate quick on your work in there.
Cool. That makes sense. So how long have you been doing this, if I can ask?
I've been doing this for, let's see, I've been working here for 1 year, and then before that I worked at another studio for about 1.5 years. So almost 3 years I've been doing games, really. Big part of that was during my time at university as well. So we actually started the first studio I was at. We started while we were studying in school, taking all that free time we had to actually make something of it.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And what do you think environment artists need to have in their portfolio these days to really, increase their chances of getting that interview? I don't mean job, just like, what do you think they need to have in their portfolio, or show in some way in their portfolio to increase the chances of getting that interview?
Well, I think that you need a good mixture of good. As an environment artist, you're kind of looking at a role of combined prop artist and level artist. So you're kind of expected to be able to do props and do levels at the same time. And in that, I think you need to show those skills. You need to show that you can create a good prop in a good isolated view, just showcase close up one thing that's really good looking. But then you also need to have a piece where you show that you can dress a full scene and make it look really pretty while having the fundamentals of composition and all that in mind, and show that you master or kind of master those skills.
Mm-hmm. What does it mean to dress a scene?
That's when you take all the props you have and you build it into a scene. You take rocks and sticks and trees and you place them into the scene and you dress it up as into what you want it to become.
Got it. So if we're talking about, if we're looking at your Lancelot sections, and we're looking at, let's say, yeah, this might be it, and we're looking at the Thornwood post.
Thornwood, yeah.
How do you pull this together? What's the stages for you in developing something like this?
So developing this at the point when I made this, we already had a bunch of props created. So it was more of a matter of just taking what we had and building something of it.
Mm-hmm.
But if we look further behind than that, the first step would be to create all the props. Right. To figure out what props you need to build this. We had a very vague concept of what we wanted the level to be, so a lot of what it ended up being was made up as we created it. But then it's just a matter of placing things out into the level and at the same time having game design test it out and having a very iterative process in there, with them changing out what doesn't work, what does work, and like constantly reiterating on those things.
Okay, so about how many elements do we see here? Because I know there's a lot of repetition, but if we're thinking about, let's say if we're an environment artist, we're trying to figure out how to do this kind of scene, and we're looking at a photograph or concept art, it's kind of easy to get overwhelmed with all the props that we have to make. So
yeah,
how do we manage that? And how many props do we actually, or elements do we actually see in this Thornwood environment?
Well, yeah, I get you. It sometimes can look really daunting to look on some environment pieces where they have a lot of stuff. But in this scene that I have up right now on my screen, I think we have a total of 7 rocks, 1 pine tree. This tree is the only crooked tree we have, so the roots that are going around is also this tree just moved into the ground. Some planks, I think there's 2 of those, this thorn thingy, and some ground textures. The ruin parts, I think there are 3 constellations of them. So it's not that many individual props, but you just have to be smart with how you use them and how and in that how you create them as well, because if you create them in the wrong way, you won't be able to use them in as many cases.
And explain that to me. What are some of the problems that we can run into along that line?
So if for example, if I were to make take this this ruin part, if I were to like combine that with the other ruin parts, which was my first intent when I created the ruins, and then I realized that I can't use these because it's such a large piece of rock that it basically blocks off almost half the levels wherever I put it. So I ended up splitting it up into 3 parts, making it a lot more usable, and not only on this level but on many other levels as well.
Okay, got it. And is that common for you to kind of build this library of assets, across, and then just start to pull from one level to another to another?
For this game we did that. We started out building props, and then we took a couple of months to build all the levels that we wanted.
Yeah.
But for other productions, for the one I'm in now, we don't really work that way. In some way, yeah, we list up the props that we need, and then we build a level from it. But a part of it comes as you go along, as you notice that, oh shit, we need this stuff as well, and then you need to fill it up with more stuff, because take for example, if I want to build want our team to have a parking lot in a level, and I say, well, we're gonna need a fence, a couple of cars, a light post. Let's make that. And then when I dress that up, I see that this looks really empty. We need like trash on the ground. We need some small grass sticking out between some of the sidewalk rocks.
Yeah.
And then it kind of evolves as you work on it, I guess.
Right. I get that. Okay. It's always funny when I'm talking to artists too, because a lot of artists will talk about how they need to be more structured and more outlined and more focused. And my response is, well, you wouldn't be an artist, right? So you'd be something else. And I think that's important when we talk about this kind of process, because as an environment artist, really, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but this is a crazy amount of stuff you got to do. So you're gonna, miss things. It's not going to be structured necessarily the way you want it to be. There's always some adjustment that happens, right?
Oh yeah, of course. No matter how good you are, I bet you you can have 20 years of experience, and I bet there's something that you're not gonna see beforehand that you're gonna need. And I think that's my view on it, is that it's kind of a part of planning to be adjustable, in that good planning is a plan that is adjustable for the things that you didn't think of when you made the plan.
No, I love that. That's a great quote. Good planning is planning that's adjustable for all the things that you didn't plan for. Sweet.
Yeah.
I'm going to tattoo that on my forearm so I can look at that frequently. It's a little wordy, but we'll see. All right, so Jacqueline is asking about, and I kind of want to get into Jacqueline's question a little bit more, but I'll start right away with it. She's asking, how often do environment artists do VFX effects?
Yeah. It depends on where in the industry you work. In AAA, you kind of don't do it at all, because then you have like hundreds of people very specified in one thing doing their thing. So you will have artists that only do VFX and they're really good at it because of that. But at a smaller studio, which I'm working at right now, I would expect an environment artist or a 3D artist to be able to do it. And if they wouldn't be able to do it, I would have to teach them, because it's a part of the pipeline. And unless we hire one, we are the best people to do it.
Got it. And do you do those effects inside of, say, Maya and port it over, or directly inside of Unity?
For our case, it's directly inside Unity, but you could do them inside Maya as well. It really depends on what you need. If you would need a smoke simulation or a fire simulation, software like Maya would be better.
Yeah.
But if you're gonna do, I don't know, floating yellow flies or fireflies or something,
right,
then a simpler thing in Unity would be easier.
And one of the advantages I've always heard people talk about with Unity is the store. But that's also kind of the problem that a lot of people have had, is the store, right? Because you can buy anything you want to make. So I'm working with a game designer right now. We're building out his course, his Unreal course. And one of the things that he was talking about was how, Unity it's a beautiful platform. And that's how, he's made his living, all the way up until now. But one of the issues that's happening with certain games is that, everything comes from the Unity store. So everything has that same kind of quality, so to speak. And original Unreal tends to kind of force you to do original assets a touch more. Are you guys buying stuff from the store? Are you developing everything in-house and whatnot? Or how useful is that store to you as an environment artist?
Well, I kind of agree with your friend there that a lot of what you see from Unity is from the store.
Yeah.
And that's I think that's a problem that Unity themselves are aware of, that they are trying to take the light away from. They don't want to be seen as that
like
type of engine. And
with the Atom project and things like that.
Yeah, exactly. They want to show that you can, with that, and they actually do show that you can make good-looking stuff with Unity, which I believe you can. And I guess sure you could go and buy some of the stuff, but I mean, as an artist, part of the challenge is to make it yourself. I mean, if I were to go buy my rocks somewhere, I wouldn't get anything out of it, and then I would just be, I don't know, would be like microtransaction for some of my skills, just bypassing the actual grind to get the actual skill.
That's a great point. And it was actually one of the things that we really focused on when I worked at Pixelogic on ZBrush. People were always asking for features. Can you do this feature like Maya? Can you do that feature like Maya? And, always there was this feature to make their life easier. And it was almost a given that if the purpose of the feature was simply to make somebody's life easier, it just wasn't going to happen. Because the craft and the art of it isn't, people aren't coming to it because it makes their life easier. They're coming to it because it makes it basically adds value to their life, right? So if you wanted to make characters and you wanted to do it the easy way, you'd go get Daz or Poser. Who sculpts their own characters? Some crazy person. Yeah. Who wants to basically sculpt and model their entire environment, when you can go buy a bunch of rocks off Unity or even TurboSquid, some crazy person. So, where I guess we're all a little there.
Well, I mean, we're artists after all.
Yeah. So,
but I mean, to answer your question, so we do actually buy some stuff that is needed in the pipeline. I mean, if we find something that we see that this is something that meets the quality level that we have, then we can implement it into the game, or we can actually buy stuff and then edit it to fit our quality needs. Because when you buy stuff from there, you get almost full, or for almost everything, you get full editorial control over it. So you can buy a system and then edit it to your needs.
Right.
And it's not just 3D assets. It's mostly about tools, I think.
Mm-hmm.
One big thing is that Unreal has the blueprint system, which Unity lacks. And I've used myself started using Amplify shader editor to basically create my own shaders and to have better control over how I create my materials.
Tell me more about that.
And that's yeah. So I got the advice from a friend, and he was using it as well, and so I kind of eyed it for a while, and then I bought it, and I don't know, I realized the power that is behind creating your own shaders. I could like combine textures into I could control how my models were receiving the texture I was giving them in a way, and it's opened up so many doors for me to create what I wanted. And plus, it's really fun to be able to work with as well.
Cool. Yeah, Joseph is noting that he thinks the real value of Unity Asset Store is actually in the tools, not the assets, but the tools. And Amplify,
yeah, I completely agree.
I came across Amplify, I think a year ago when we were starting the VR boot camp, and that looks like an unbelievable tool for creating your own shaders and doing them with this kind of, I guess a look that's similar to some of the stuff that I'm seeing on Lancelot. Or what have you found the value of Amplify for you so far?
So I'm gonna switch to this one, because this was the first I made with Amplify.
Okay,
and
great.
Here
and this is
where I
can. Who aren't watching the actual one. This is called the Ancient Oasis over on his ArtStation.
Yes, and I discovered. This is where I discovered all the uses for it. And I mean, I take this pillar in the background, for instance. These snake symbols and stuff, these are not textured directly into the pillar. These are added as a separate layer in the shader as just a normal map, and then it blends that normal map together with the one I already have on the pillar. So you can start to, like I said, control how things are made in a much more free way.
That's great. So kind of like a layer stack. Is that how I understood it?
Well, that's part of it. Yeah, you can blend two different textures without actually combining them into one texture. So if you look at it, I put in two textures, and while they are being processed in the computer, they are being merged into one and then put on top of the model as it's being rendered and put on my screen.
Got it. Okay. And, back along those lines, so I know tools are powerful inside of Unity. I've seen that. And this, this is a great setup scene. How about when you've got an environment artist, they want a job as an environment artist? Let's say I'm just starting out, I'm a student, I want a job at a AAA studio, but really I'll take like anything. I want to be in the industry because, Starbucks is grating on my nerves. Another unicorn frappuccino and I'm going to lose my mind kind of thing. So do I use assets? Do I create my own? Where's the line there for if I'm going to build it inside of Unity? Am I allowed to touch any assets that are already there so that people can see that I can set dress? Or what are your thoughts on that?
Well, yeah, of course. A good stepping stone could be to practice your dressing skills. Could be to buy an asset pack of really cool looking stuff, and then just spend a couple of weeks, maybe a month, dressing the scene, lighting the scene, to show that you can show your skills in dressing and lighting. But it would sure be a big plus if you showed, or if you created the assets yourself as well, because then you would get, like I said, then you would get kick-ass props on your portfolio and a kick-ass scene.
Got it. All right, that actually makes a lot of sense, because if you're going to create an environment, you're going to, let's say, pull some assets in from Unity and all of that, and you create the scene. You could just make the scene is the ArtStation post. You'll put on your description in the side. You'll put, hey, I bought this from this asset pack and things like that, and this is about set dressing and lighting and things like that. But none of those assets would then go into individual posts. You'd have to do that for the other stuff. That makes sense to me.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay, great. Now, if we head over to your Sacred Grove post, one of the things that I'm noticing about your work is you got a lot of these like dioramas, so to speak, which is something I've been seeing out a little bit. We were interviewing Joanne Elvidge, I think. Did I get that correct? And, you know, she has these beautiful just dioramas, just really great stuff that is all like a cinematic package. So, you know, if we're thinking about environment artists, and yeah, let me see if I can find her exact. Is it Joanne? Joe Elvid. Joe Elv. Anya Joe Elvidge. Anya, I'm sorry. I'm dyslexic, so if you're listening to this, you know, forgive me. I put the J in front of the A, and it all became one.
Yeah, I found her on ArtStation now.
Yeah, so Anya Jo Elvidge, you know, just pulling together these beautiful things that she posted on level 80. And so I'm looking at this and I'm thinking about my environment students. And I'm looking at your work with Sacred Grove, again, thinking about my environment students. And I'm thinking, you know, if there's one project I want them to create, you know, what are the parameters that are going to help them make a difference in that portfolio, in their career, to really get that interview? So, you know, this is a complete package. Your Sacred Grove is a complete package. You look at Anya Jo Elvidge, it's kind of a complete package. But then my environment students will come in and they'll be like, I want to create this sepulchre, this kind of church interior, and then it's very hard for them to finish it and things like that. So what are the what's the advice that you give environment artists in terms of the projects that they should make? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I get what you're saying, that you get the whole package by doing something like this, and it's really good, because then you, like we said, then you get get both the props and the environment in one bang. But if you have to be careful with the size of the project you're taking on, because if you take on something too big, you'll just end up doing, like, I don't know, 200 props, and you'll get tired of it and you won't have passion for creating it. I mean, it's art we're creating in the end. So you have to want to make this look amazing. And if you lose that spark of that particular piece, it won't end up looking amazing, and then it's just wasted time. So it's better to, that's why smaller dioramas, like some of the ones I'm seeing at Anya's portfolio is I think are so good to start out with, because then you end up doing some props and some dressing in a small format, and it starts to show that you can do those things, but on a smaller scale.
Awesome. Great. Now, if we switch tracks here a little bit, you put together a level 80, and I love the guys over at 80 level. You put together a tutorial for them.
Yeah.
In February. I think that's one of the ways in which I came across. How valuable was this this tutorial to you? Did it do anything significant for your career? Do you recommend this kind of work or outreach?
Which tutorial are we talking about? I did
the Ancient Oasis.
2 of them.
So refining environment design with clever shaders.
Yeah, I have it over here. Yeah, so I mean, this, as I said, I did a lot of new things in this project with the whole shader editor and and a lot of other stuff as well. Like, and it was really fun. And I mean, the best way to, or the most fun way to share new discoveries is to tell other people about it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, this was absolutely super fun to do. And I think one thing that I'm not sure how I should phrase it.
Mm-hmm.
One way to test how you truly learn something is to try and teach it to someone else.
Yeah.
And if you can't teach it to someone else, you haven't learned it enough, or you're not good enough at it.
Yeah. I 100% agree with that. And one of the things that I've been talking to my boot campers about is, is basically my entire career. Everything I have comes from sharing whatever I know with people.
Mm-hmm.
And that's everything I have in my career. That's the business, it's the house, everything I have comes from just sharing what I have. But I have a slightly different situation because that I've ended up building my whole life around that. But how valuable is it to people who are working in the game industry to take a moment, document this stuff, share it with their friends? What are the real practical effects in their life? Does it increase quote unquote brand awareness? And I just mean, does it help people get to know who you are? Does it help you get a job? Has it helped in any way like that?
Yeah. I think definitely it sure does. I mean, while you're sharing your way of not just sharing your work as a regular portfolio piece on ArtStation,
Mm-hmm.
if you're also sharing your looks or your techniques behind that piece, it drives even more attention towards your piece because if people look at a scene like this and they think, oh shit, this looks great. How did he make that? And then if I have an article somewhere or a blog post or maybe even a video of me creating that, people are going to go even further and dive into more of my stuff, and that builds more recollection and more thing to my name.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's definitely gonna, I think that's definitely gonna be to my advantage. And as well, I think most of the industry is built upon us sharing with each other. I mean, even though AAA and almost every game studio is very secretive about their techniques, there's a kind of strange and good way everyone is sharing techniques and sharing a will to help each other improve as artists. I mean, that's why we're doing things like this and things like level up and level 80 as well.
Yeah, level 80's putting out, I don't know, 6, sometimes 8 posts a day, just sharing stuff. It's quite powerful. There is a section in this tutorial where you talk about hard edge, soft edge. And you're talking about the water edge, I believe. You're using Substance Designer.
Yes. Or no, not for the water. No, I'm creating that in the shader editor.
Okay. So explain this to me. What are we trying to achieve here?
So let's see. Yeah, I can enlarge it as well. So what I did when I created the water was that I had I created this water shader that had transparency and normal warping and reflections and all that stuff, and it looked pretty good. But I noticed that I had this ugly hard edge where it met the other mesh, which was the ground,
right?
And that doesn't look natural. So I needed to find a way to get rid of that, and a way to do that was you could take the distance that mesh had to the mesh behind it and blend that into the transparency.
Got it.
Now,
Now,
that makes sense.
It does. But now the next question is if you look at the entire image, that's probably maybe, depending on the size of it, but that's probably 20 pixels across. Not a lot of space. It's not very big, right?
Yeah. But I mean even though it's a very small part of the image, it's the small things amount up to the bigger picture in the end. So if I would have shown the video without that fixed and without all the other things that I fixed over the time I worked on it, it wouldn't have looked as good. So all those tiny fixes amount up to it looking better in the end.
Great. Perfect. That's it. It's kind of exactly where I was leading, because the other element here that I see is students will start out and they'll be like, okay, I'm going to make this, I'm going to make that, and everything's linear in their mindset. They're like, my goal is here. I make this. I'll be 50% done with assets. That means I'm 50% done. And that means you're probably
Yeah,
at like 15% done. So what are some of the, can you explain the process of how you do this and get to it? You know, how much of it is actually building? How much of it is you kind of massaging scenes and finessing and dealing with things like this tiny little hard edge versus soft edge part?
so I don't know. A lot of it is actually about like iterating what you start with. I can actually get you a GIF to show as an example.
Okay.
Because I take progress shots throughout the creation of my levels, and I in the end show how it has evolved over time. And here you can see that pretty early on I start to like block out and get out the basic composition of the image, and then I start tweaking the scale. And even though it's the kind of the same palm trees all the time, it's the same sand on the ground all the time, it's about adding the finer and finer detail all along the way.
Is that the
And
Adam character for scale that's added in there in the
yeah,
beginning?
I use the Adam character as a scale reference in my project. And I think that someone sometimes said that it's like 90% of the time you spend on a work is for the last 10% of the project.
Yeah.
Because you reach a point in a project where you constantly keep finding small stuff that you can improve, and that's a good thing, because then that means you can improve and you should do it. So I find myself even sometimes feeling a pressure to finish up a piece and publish it, but the best thing actually is to stick with it. And if I see stuff that looks bad, I should fix it. Because whenever you post a new piece, it should be the best piece that you can make at the time. I think, at least that's what I think.
That's you and I, we can say this. I've seen it, I've done it, you've seen it, you've done it. But when you were first starting out, that was probably a hard lesson for you to even listen to.
Yeah.
How did you kind of I don't know how to say this, but as you were going, like, what was your journey kind of learning that you have to kind of sit with this for so much longer than you maybe, like, to the point where you're just sick of it, but you know that another hour actually gets amazing results?
Yeah, well, from, I guess, trial and error. I mean, in the beginning, you take this scene for example again. I mean, when I reached a stage where I felt happy with what I got, I shared it with a community that I'm part of, with that has a couple of thousand artists in it, environment artists in it, and then I posted the image and I said that I'm feeling kind of happy with what I got, and I'm feeling kind of stuck because I don't know what to improve, and I know it's not perfect, because if it was perfect, I would be a millionaire. you can't make something perfect.
Yeah.
So as I said, like, I'm stuck. Can you help me? And then I got tons of feedback. So when you feel that you've reached a good, my advice would be that when you think that you have reached a good point and say this is good now, show it to someone or to several other people on your level or above your level, or doing or generally doing the same thing as you or the other artists, and I bet you they'll have things to critique on that look strange to them and not you, because you've been staring on at this piece for I don't know how many hours and days.
Yeah, that's great. That's awesome. All right, and so if somebody wants to get a job at Tarbell, you're at Tarbell, right?
No, Tarhead Studio.
Tarhead. Okay, good. See, there's my dyslexia. I see the T and the O shape. So at Tarhead Studios, somebody wants to get a job at Tarhead Studios. Does your studio like yours, do they look for experience? Do they have to have shipped a game or anything like that?
Well, it depends on what kind of position we would be looking for. I
Sure.
mean, if
Yeah.
we would be looking for a intern level or junior, no. But if we were missing a lead position, we would most certainly be looking for experience in shipping previous titles.
Yeah.
So I guess it would totally depend on what kind of
If we were talking
position the
junior.
studio is in at the time.
Yeah. So if we were talking
Junior,
junior, yeah.
So junior, I don't think you would need any experience really in shipped titles. The only thing you would have to show is that you have a kick-ass level of quality on your art and that you can produce it in a constant level. Like just having one piece that looks good isn't enough. You need to show that you can do it more than once.
Right. Twice?
I think at a junior level, that's at a junior level, I think that's what's important. And I don't know. There's never a good number really. Some people say 6, some people say 12, but somewhere there in between total pieces of around 5 and up, but not above 10, I would say, because then it gets too much, and then it's like your single pieces start to lose glory almost, or if I could use that word.
Yeah. Got it. And then what tells you that somebody's work is really succeeding? One of the things that I teach in the boot camp is that, it's not important to know everything in that it's not even possible, but it's not important. And so students usually come into an experience and they're like, I'm going to learn what I need to do. But then in the process, they usually will discover that there is no way to learn everything you have to do because, there's so much to do. What you have to do instead is you just have to be doing and producing results that show that you know X, Y, and Z. And so we talk about the industry skills, or the way I like to phrase it is that there are these triggers that when somebody looks at the work, they're like, you're a professional. Or there's triggers that say, oh yeah, I know where you are. You're where I was 5 years ago, right? And, tells people that they're in an earlier stage. So like, for example, with me, I know where people are in anatomy by looking at their elbows. So what they do with the elbows, what they do with the knees, what they do with the ankles. If those aren't sculpted well, I know where they are, right? It's just simple. Everybody follows the same path. So what do you think are the important things that people miss? When I'm going for a junior environment artist position. I need my work to have, these 3 things that, people normally miss.
So that's a tough one.
I
know. what people normally miss out. I mean, it's really all kinds of things, but the biggest ones I would say is not correct material definition. Like like if you have a piece of grass, that grass looks too saturated in the greens, or too glossy in the smoothness or roughness. You kind of aren't nailing the textures properly. Other thing is the general use of lighting. You overexpose or you underexpose. That's very common, I think, very early on in students, that they tend to show their props in very dark scenes. And I don't know why, but I have a hunch or an idea that might be because they subconsciously don't feel like, or they are kind of shy to show it, which is completely fine. I mean, we're all shy to show our work, and especially when we're early on and showing it to senior people. I mean, even senior people are afraid of sharing work with senior people sometimes.
Yeah, I get that.
But yeah, I would say that's that's the bigger ones. And then, I mean, the general thing is that I often see is you miss out on it's the again the tiny things that build up to. I can see that you forgot to bevel an edge, or you used the texture wrong in some place. You got a sloppy UV somewhere, and those amount up to seeing things. And when I can see how you have done things, I can see what techniques you are using and what techniques you're not using. If I'm making sense.
Yeah, totally. No, that makes a lot of sense. So definitely lighting and the exposure value is going to tell you a lot, especially if somebody's blowing out their highlights. It has to do with how the props are integrated, the color, maybe, or I think you said material definition, which has come up multiple times when I ask people this question. And then the other one is just paying attention to detail. Like that hard soft edge thing. So if somebody's not paying attention to detail, or if they miss too many details, that probably, and I'm just assuming, that probably subconsciously just telegraphs to you that, they're not, like, they're still at that amateur phase where they're expecting this to be a linear process, and they're not realizing that they need to put 90% of their time fixing those things.
Well, yeah, kind of. And it's some part of it is about just training your artistic eye in a sense that you don't always see. I remember myself like thinking back on older pieces, and I was posting them and thinking, damn, this looks awesome. And I look back at them now and they look like crap. And that was because I didn't have a good enough eye for it back then, so I couldn't see what I can see now.
Yeah.
And it's a strange thing, but you one of the details you mentioned, you often miss out on how objects interact with each other. Take if you make a see if I have a good example here. These scaffolds. So one thing would be to like how the logs are interacting with each other. They're like that they have dirt closer to where they interact. That the ropes they are tied in between. That they're tied together. That the ropes have dirt accumulated on the edge towards the wood. If you were to miss those things, that's something that wouldn't instantly stick out as there's no dirt on the wood. It would just look strange,
right?
And to the trained eye, and I think it's the same thing with the hard water edge. It's something that you could miss if you don't have an eye for finding those details, and I think that's part of the big journey of growing as an artist. You just keep doing it, and you train your eye to spot those tiny details that in the end will make your piece look perfect.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. All right, Tobias, man, thank you so much for taking the time and for sharing your passion and your journey with me.
Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And Tobias, have an amazing day.
You too, man. Thank you.
All right, take care. Take care, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.